They won't understand how hard it is for you to let go. Because from the outside, you look fine. You look calm, collected, maybe even cold. They see your silence and think you've moved on. But they don't see the storm that still lives beneath your skin. The way your soul screams when no one's watching. It's not just about walking away from someone. It's about walking away from a version of you that believed they were your everything. That version of you that saw them as home, that prayed they'd stay. That thought love meant endurance, not balance. The pain isn't in the loss. It's in the meaning you gave to them. Because when that meaning collapses, it shakes your very identity. They weren't just a person, they were your mirror. The one you handed your wounds to, hoping they'd hold them gently. The one who touched your loneliness, made you feel something when the world felt numb. So when they left, it wasn't just their absence that hurt. It was a silence of who you became around them. You didn't just lose them. You lost the version of yourself that existed only in their light. And now you stand in the dark, asking, how do I let go of someone who feels like a part of me? How do I detach when losing them feels like losing myself? Start here. You're not losing them. You're meeting yourself again. Detachment isn't cold. It's clear. It's not about not caring. It's about caring enough for your peace to stop bleeding for someone who keeps reopening your wounds. Somewhere along the way, you confused attachment with love. You mistook intensity for intimacy. You believed if you stayed, it meant you were loyal. When in truth, it just meant you were afraid to be alone. You stayed because it felt deep, not because it was right. You thought persistence meant purpose. You believed love had to hurt to be real. When someone makes you feel seen, it carves deep into your memory. Even if it came with chaos, even if it came with pain, you remember the spark of being noticed, of being chosen. So you cling not to the person, but to the feeling they unlocked. But what if that feeling was never theirs to give? What if it was always yours, waiting for you to return to it? That's where detachment begins. With one realization: I am not what they did to me. I am what I choose to do with what happened. Your story doesn't end where they left. It begins where you return to yourself. So stop replaying the conversations. Stop decoding their silence. Stop analyzing every mixed signal. Every time you do, you tether your healing to their absence. Detachment begins when you decide your healing doesn't require their permission. It's when you can still feel the ache and not go back. When you can still miss their laugh and not text them. When you can still remember the good and still walk away. Because maturity is realizing that familiarity isn't destiny. That maybe they've changed is just your pain speaking in disguise. Detachment doesn't negotiate with maybe. It says, even if it was real, it's no longer right. Asterisk, no one teaches you how to unhook from someone who felt like home. Especially when you built your world around them. But here's the truth. They weren't your home. They were your habit. And habits don't break by force. They fade through replacement. Replace them with silence, not to punish, but to recalibrate. Replace them with solitude, not to hide, but to hear your own soul again. Replace them with rituals, small promises whispered to yourself. I choose me now. And above all, express, don't suppress. Write the letter you'll never send. Speak to the wind. Let the tears fall, the body shake, the voice crack. because the pain you refuse to express becomes the weight you carry. Detachment isn't a single moment. It's a ritual of returning again and again. Every time your mind drifts back to them, whisper, "This is part of healing." Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with less pain. You don't need to hate them to move on. You don't need to erase them to grow. You just need to stop letting the memory of them be more alive than your present. Most people never detach because they're still waiting. For closure, for fairness, for the universe to make sense of it all. But closure is rarely given. Sometimes it's realizing they couldn't give you the ending you deserved. And that's not your fault. The moment you stop waiting for them to return and start returning to yourself, everything changes. The silence stops feeling like punishment. It becomes peace. The memories stop being chains. They become lessons. And the love you once poured into them finally begins to come home to you. The real moment of detachment isn't when you stop loving them. It's when you realize you've always been worthy of a love that doesn't hurt. That's when everything shifts. That's when peace starts to feel like power. But before it does, your mind will try one more trick. It'll whisper, "Stay, star," because pain is familiar. And the familiar feels safe even when it's killing you. Pain gives you a false sense of control. You think that by holding on, you're protecting yourself from the fall. But control isn't safety, it's a cage. A cage built out of fear, where your joy gets rationed and your worth depends on someone else's validation. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It means realizing that your peace is sacred, that someone else's chaos should never decide the weather inside your soul. You don't detach through force. You detach through clarity. And clarity is born when you stop romanticizing the pattern, when you stop mistaking inconsistency for mystery, when you stop calling your anxiety chemistry. Clarity is when you finally admit the truth. The highs were just distractions from the deep aching lows. Love isn't supposed to feel like you're constantly apologizing for existing. And once you see that, detachment becomes less about willpower and more about alignment. You realize it was never love. It was familiarity. You were trying to fix a story from the past, hoping that if you could save them, you could finally save yourself. But they were never your project, and you were never broken. You were just repeating a wound that whispered, "If I can be perfect, maybe they won't leave." You detach the moment you see that you never had to earn love. You detach the moment you understand your love was real, but it was being poured into a bottomless cup. Detachment is returning to yourself, reclaiming the parts of you that went quiet to keep the peace, the dreams you delayed, the voice you buried, because you didn't lose them. You lost yourself trying to be enough for them. Now you're coming home. Peace will feel strange at first. It will feel like emptiness, because chaos used to feel like love. But slowly, calm stops being boring. It starts feeling safe. Detachment is when stillness no longer feels like loneliness, when presence becomes more powerful than intensity, when your boundaries become the loudest form of self-love. You'll miss them sometimes, not because they were good for you, but because you were good to them. You'll grieve what could have been, but that grief is sacred. It means you care deeply. Feel it, honor it, then let it pass. Detachment isn't bitterness. It's not pretending you don't care. It's knowing you deserve peace more than closure. It's understanding that healing doesn't always need words. Sometimes it's just the quiet act of walking away and never turning back. And one day you'll wake up and realize you don't check your phone anymore. You don't flinch when you hear their name. You don't shrink in rooms that remind you of them. The songs that once made you cry now make you smile. Not because they mean nothing, but because you finally mean more. That's when you know you didn't just survive. You healed. And there's one last chain to break. The belief that if you let go, you'll never feel love again. That's the oldest lie. Because love was never something they gave you. It's something that awakened within you. You don't move on by replacing them. You move on by transforming the space they left behind. Every time you choose silence over reaching out, you plant a seed. Every day you choose peace over answers, you water your strength. Until one day, your nervous system stops seeing silence as danger and starts seeing it as freedom. You know you've detached when you can miss them and not wish for them back. When you can love them without betraying yourself. When your heart holds compassion but your peace remains untouched. Because true detachment isn't cold. It's warm self-respect. It's saying, I love you, but not at the expense of my soul. I care, but I won't lose myself again. You stop bleeding for people who never stopped to see you were hurting. You stop performing for love. You start becoming love. Because the fastest way to let go is not pretending you don't care. It's realizing you never had to earn love in the first place. It was always yours. And one day when someone new arrives, I know peace. You'll know your worth. You'll know that the real story was never about who left, but who stayed. You did. And that was enough all along. So when you look back, not at them but at you, you'll realize this wasn't the moment you broke. It was the moment you woke up. Because the fastest way to detach is to fall in love with the person you become when you finally do.